I'm Josiah Rizzo.
I'm Benji Jones.
And on Wednesdays, we wear pink. Do you guys remember the first time you watched Inglourious Bastards and saw the ending? Does anyone?
We were in the theater, weren't we?
Oh, yeah.
We were in the theater, weren't we?
Into the mic, please.
Grace and I, we were.
Christmas, no?
No. Well,
I think it was.
Shoot, I actually can't remember when it came out.
It was either like Thanksgiving or Christmas.
It was later.
The day that Mom was like, I don't think we should do this.
No, that was
Django. That was Django.
Somehow we convinced our parents to see
Christmas.
Django Unchained on
So
Christmas.
Wow.
In the first 5 minutes.
I feel like that would be an easy convince because you'd be like, oh, let's go see this. And he'd be like, no. And you'd be like, what, are you racist? And he'd be like, no, I'll go see Django.
Wow, somehow you got the exact conversation. How did that happen?
That's exactly how that went.
I remember because in the first 5 minutes, the horse gets a shotgun to the face.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
And I looked over at Mom and just was like, Merry Christmas.
This is what we signed up for.
Happy holidays.
Kind of like how me and my dad ended up seeing Twilight for the first time. He didn't know what it was about. And so we had we were early for our movie, so we sat in that movie to wait for our movie to start, and then we ended up liking it, so we stayed through almost the whole thing. And then at the point where we realized that Edward is a vampire, my dad's like, what? You got me watching this double movie, let's get out of here. And I was like, Dad, if you don't sit down, we already missed our movie, we're gonna finish this. And then he ended up loving it, and he owns all of the movies now.
Your dad?
Yes, he loves Twilight.
That's development I did not know.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm actually about the Twilight series. If I do say so. I don't like it per se. I think that the graphics are
shite.
Pretty shite,
but you respect their hustle.
It's so weird.
I do respect their hustle.
I feel it. Anyways, so we're not here to talk about Twilight.
No, actually, first off, I just want to say welcome back, all you listeners.
All y'all listeners.
I'm Josiah Rizzo.
I'm Benji Jones.
I'm Thug Muffin.
Yes.
And on Wednesdays, we wear pink. And this is a
right.
pop culture podcast. Wow, I literally forgot everything. I got thrown off by that Thug Muffin.
It's not me.
No,
this is our pop culture.
This
is our pop culture podcast where we talk about our experiences with film and media and everything else.
Oh, and you took away the and everything else.
I took all of the lines.
And the impact that it's leaving on our generation.
Beautiful.
Today we have my sister, Grace Rizzo, and we're going to be talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Just tell us a little bit about yourself so the audience can know who you is.
Who I is. I'm definitely Josiah Rizzo's sister.
Yep.
Benji Jones' longtime friend.
And part-time lover.
Okay.
On Wednesdays.
And we've, is there anything else that we've done together? Because we've done a few projects together.
We've done quite a few projects. We've made a couple of films together. We just recently put out our first actual feature together where he directed and I co-wrote alongside a friend of mine.
Yeah, that was called Molly Talk.
Thank you.
It was about two girls falling in love while on
Molly.
And then now what are you doing? Because you're actually doing something tonight, aren't you?
I am. I have my first ever solo performance this evening at Hollywood Party Los Angeles.
Yes.
Nice. How would you describe the type of music that you sing?
Oh, foul. Just very foul. Foul.
Really quick and
foul.
To the point.
No, it's all different kinds of foul, you know?
Yeah.
Classic foul, country foul,
New age foul.
Foghorn Leghorn foul.
Oh yeah. There is definitely some
foul.
Bok foul. BDF.
Strike you're out foul.
Kids call it. Yeah.
Oh, that was clever. Oh, we are just a clever freaking family here, aren't we?
No, yes, I do make music. We make films. I am an actress. I'm working on a project right now, and I can't say the name of because I will be shot down dead on site. So that is what's going on in my life currently.
Yeah.
She's got a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
Way too much.
I'm raising twins.
Also.
But today, so I know we are actually passing sails in the night or passing ships in the night.
Mm-hmm.
I feel
I
like
literally came in at 4:30 this morning and he was leaving for work.
That's last week though. We actually had a chance for all three of us to sync our schedules and go and see the movie that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah,
which was actually fun. I was really excited because it was one of the first times I got to relax and enjoy a film with my friends and it not be like it's just I don't know.
Fun.
Just a casual like, hey, do you want to go? Yeah, let's do this, and kind of stumble
made it
in the
happen.
theater and no big deal.
Didn't go to like a big theater either. We went to like a theater in what was it, Oxnard?
Not
Oxnard.
Woodland Hills.
Woodland Hills.
Sorry,
Oxnard.
I used to work there. Where was it that I worked?
Yeah, it was nice. It was like no traffic, no parking issues, not a lot of people.
It was lovely.
It was so nice.
It was
And
good.
then it was 3 hours. A 3-hour film.
I didn't know what I was getting
I
into.
asked if we could go later, and we went later. And then that later ended up being just too darn late.
I had no idea it was a Quentin Tarantino movie until the very end, and I was like, "Holy shit, this is crazy!" And I still didn't realize it until the end when it was like by Quentin Tarantino, and I was like,
that makes sense.
I was like, "Oh, okay."
So the film was about Rick Dalton, who was portrayed by Leonardo DiCaprio, who is an aging Western star who's kind of like on the outs with Hollywood. And he hangs out with his best friend and stunt double, Cliff Booth, who's portrayed by Brad Pitt. And then that's pretty much the entirety of the plot.
Oh my gosh. That's all the movie is. It's just these two guys hanging out and doing nothing. Movie over.
For 3 hours. Not movie over. That was 3 hours of that.
The two guys they do their thing and then the movie's over 4 hours
And that
later.
actually is the most accurate time we've ever said that before.
But the movie, it was about a friendship.
It was, okay, so initial thoughts, I didn't remember what this was until we were watching it. But watching it, I did enjoy it as an actor. I enjoyed seeing like a snapshot of Hollywood and the industry and LA at that time. It was really interesting to be in like a time capsule or a time machine kind of thing. So that's really what I enjoyed. But it was something that probably would only be interesting once, I would say.
Yeah. Grace?
I would definitely watch it again when I'm not tired and I'm not in an uncomfortable seat. I think that the movie-going experience is kind of hard for me because I do have anxiety attacks in movie theaters based on how tight my space is. So if my space is really confined, I do find it hard to enjoy a film. So that's just something on me. I think if I watched it again in a more hospitable place, I might enjoy it a little bit more because I actually do like dialogue. I really do like stories that maybe don't need much, especially if the acting is really good, which it was. I
don't know how I felt about it. I definitely want to watch it again.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I agree with you. I love seeing movies in theaters, but that one was a tad too much for me, which I feel horrible about saying. There's a lot of craft that goes into it, but it was kind of a film that I thought this would be really enjoyable, like as a chill movie, like something that you put on, you kind of just relax to. I can imagine people who smoke would probably really enjoy just like vibing, relaxing. It's a hangout movie.
It's a good movie to play in the background of doing something else.
I wouldn't maybe trash it that much, but I would agree with you.
I don't mean that disrespectfully. I just mean like a lot of nothing.
Like you're different. You require a lot more glitz and
I require a lot more
pizzazz.
bright colors and movement and.
I don't know. I'm pretty patient with films, and that one kind of tried me a little bit. But it was weird because the craft of it was really well done.
Yes.
Like the acting was really good. I really enjoyed particularly Brad Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't playing anything spectacularly out of the ordinary. It was the same role he kind of does all the time, but it felt
easy to watch.
Yeah.
Leo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, I was about to say Bradley Cooper, and Brad Pitt are very, very easy to watch because their performances are seamless. You don't see them thinking about anything. You just see them living most of the time. Even when their characters are over the top, you see it as realistic. You know, it's very much, that's a person, you know? And so I think it's very fun to watch their chemistry together. Obviously, I almost think that's what the film was for. Was literally because Leo DiCaprio, not that they're dying actors, they're not, but they have their heydays a little bit past. Yeah. Except that they're both phenomenal actors, so their heyday will never really pass.
Yeah, I think it's just they're both in kind of their sit-down phase.
Yeah, just a little bit. And I felt like Tarantino almost made like a love story for them. And their
except they didn't like kiss or anything. So like, what's the point? There was about 6 times when I was like, so are you going to kiss him or what?
Bromance films are really wonderful. I enjoy bromance films, and I felt like this was definitely one of them.
So I guess we all kind of agree. Very good craft. little long.
Little long, but
long.
yeah. I mean, there were definitely great moments in it.
But all of his films are, I just think all of his films, there are more in between moments of,
Right.
Yeah.
This definitely didn't. This felt the least. Okay, knowing Tarantino's love for film, it felt 100%, 110% Tarantino.
Yeah.
But watching his films for so long and understanding like the tics and the quirks and the things that he does regularly, this felt the least Tarantino-y.
Yeah.
Until the end.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like even the dialogue, the way that the scenes played out was not the typical Tarantino fashion.
It was slower.
Much slower.
Oh yeah. I've seen a lot of Quentin Tarantino movies, and like I've never been that conscious of how long it was. Like when you guys said they're usually long, like I've never noticed that except for this.
But I feel like everything we're saying is stuff Tarantino knew people would say about it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I think he said, yeah, fuck it. This is my last. I want it to be just
Is
as
this
genuine.
his last film?
Didn't he
It's
say
his
that?
second to last
Second
film.
last.
At least I don't know. He's like that guy who says he's gonna leave the party, but then keeps coming back.
Or
He's
says
like,
he's getting off Instagram.
yeah, because like this is
doesn't.
supposed to be his. Like he said he's gonna retire at 10, but now he's also saying that he's writing. Weirdly enough, he's writing a Star Trek film. And he's contemplating that being his last film, but he's also saying it wouldn't technically be his last because it's a franchise.
Because it's not technically his film.
So I'm just like, Tarantino,
Get
you
into
don't need to
those
tell me anything.
Yeah,
Just
don't-
Technicalities.
make your film and retire when you want to. Like, I don't care.
He's like, no, guys, I'm really gonna do it this time. I'm gonna
Okay.
stop.
All right. You know what it reminded me of, Grace? It reminded me of Zodiac. Did you ever see that movie?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, no, I started watching it 3 or 4 times, and all 3 times I fell asleep.
Well, Grace, first off, one of the reasons we wanted to bring you on, A, you're my sister,
Mm-hmm.
and it was due.
Yeah.
But B, you are a big fan of like these kind of like real life.
You're a
like,
big fan of Charles Manson.
Pull it back. I don't want to sound like one of those girls that's like, I love serial killers. I don't.
You're fascinated by.
Yes, I'm fascinated by any form of personality disorder, and of course, with any of these cases of, say, like the Manson murders, Jim Jones, all of those, there's a lot of personality disorders involved. So it's something that I do take a lot of time actually researching, and I'm not talking about like a couple of like Huffington Post articles on the matter. I mean,
Nope.
like deep research.
And so, from that perspective, obviously understanding that this
Right.
wasn't supposed to be
Like a
exclusively
caricature. Yeah.
a Manson film, they
Right.
just happened to take part of it. Even still knowing that, what were your initial feelings about the way that was portrayed?
I love that he wanted to bring in that story for this film because it just encompassed, I guess, Hollywood at that time of the self-indulgence of these kids thinking that they're doing something, but they're just following orders. And
Okay.
I honestly thought it was a great idea to bring the story in. My initial thought was not that I wanted more realistic, because I love that he fucked up the end. Like,
Okay.
or I'm sorry, that he muffed up the end.
You can
That he
say
changed.
fucked up.
That he changed it.
That he changed it. I really did like that he went in and obliterated them. But I would have liked, because there are 3 murders, actually 3 houses of murder in total. And I thought, even though the story was about that house, it would have been really great that if that ending scene, if we would have cut out just a little bit of the middle portion of the film to have the ending violence go a little bit longer with the other houses that got hit.
But I thought those were at separate times. I don't know a
They
lot.
were. One was actually the night before Sharon Tate, or
Okay.
oh god, now am I messing it up? Yeah, the La Bianca house I think was the night before.
So can you, for just a brief, like if you could give a brief summary as to what essentially happened with these girls during that time,
Yeah.
and who Charles Manson was.
Charles Manson was an artist, a singer-songwriter, or like a up-and-coming, not really, but
Right.
a wannabe singer-songwriter who had gone to jail multiple times, had been sent in jail as a kid for everything from prostituting women, drugs, fights. So he had already been in the system, had experienced a pretty rough life, and then as he got older, he just started really gravitating towards the Woodstock movement and the hippie movement, and kind of seeing how all this free love could have potentially be used for his advantage. Obviously not going into it thinking that he's going to murder a bunch of people, but he's just pretty much your average everyday narcissist who is simply obsessed with themselves to the point where they don't see faults in themselves, and they make it difficult for others to see flaws in them as well, because they're very good at hiding it. So basically what he did is he would pick up, young girls who maybe didn't have as exciting of a life or had a very damaged life, and kind of took them in as like a leader, father, lover, same with men, almost just brought them in like it was going to be a big happy family, and it was for a while. It was a very good movement. It was just a lot of people doing drugs and having sex and porking and anything that most of your typical communities are started from, with the exception that he was a extreme narcissist. Maybe like, I'm not sure if it's Machiavellian because I wasn't there with him and I'm not his therapist, so I can't tell what kind of like narcissist he is. But so the night of, there's different stories that go into why Sharon Tate's house was targeted and why the LaBianca's house was targeted. A lot of it doing with bad drug deals, which I think they started to touch on.
Well, they touched on, not the drug deal, they touched on the kind of the coincidence of there was a producer there that had rejected him.
Yes.
That had previously lived in the Tate house.
Musically, because he was getting rejected musically. They were saying, you're not really...
So then he just went, fuck anybody who lived there.
Yeah, ballistic on him. And of course, it's narcissistic rage. And people that suffer from that are very good at manipulating others to do what they want without ever telling them what to do.
So they always have that plausible deniability.
Yes, every time. So basically, that's what happened. Some of them could have had their own personality disorders to start off with. I think Susan Atkins was definitely... probably diagnosable, whereas the rest of the girls were just malleable. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, they're like moldable.
Impressionable.
Yeah,
because they had boring lives. They were average, everyday white American, kind of coasting. Didn't want to subscribe to the wife and kids where they had to get married, had to have children and be a homemaker. These girls wanted more out of their life, and Charles Manson promised that and did give them that for a good majority of the time.
What's that old church saying? Boredom is the devil's playground. Is that
idle hands are the devil's playground?
Idle hands are the devil. The
devil's plaything.
Culturally, I think that is absolutely accurate when it comes to just like I don't.
If you're bored.
Because you have like almost like a split line, like the people who have not been as privileged who have to deal with another side of problems, and then if they have issues, it stems from kind of like the oppression, whereas then you'll have the other side, which is like the issues come in a different way, and if they're not being oppressed, it's like they still have human tendencies that are now going to manifest in
other things,
in other ways.
Their time is not occupied trying to live, then it's trying to just entertain themselves.
Yeah,
that's dark.
No, it's true.
Something else that was very interesting that I had never really considered. The thing about the Manson murders was that it was kind of a clear end, among other things. Also, I think that was around the time when the revivals were happening, like the church revivals were kind of simultaneously happening around this time, where it was just like you had a few things culturally that were putting an end to kind of the free love movement.
Yeah, because I was like I remember I heard a church service about how the free love movement was going right at like the beginning, or was ending right when the church was reviving again.
Yeah. So there's a few things that culturally that kind of all came to a head where it basically was like that whole free love, let's just do whatever we want, kind of was like, stopped in its path. And even people who were 100% for it were kind of like, ooh, they reevaluated to see people killed, like Sharon Tate killed in her prime. It was just like, it was even more so than Vietnam. It was like, oh, this got brought to our doorsteps. And that's dark. We can't really.
Yeah.
And what is so obscurely funny, it's awful, it's morbid, but what is so funny about the Manson murders is I guess I want to say the ludicrousy of how much those murders got blown out of proportion, which they were brutal, they were disgusting, disturbing. Sharon Tate was stabbed 11 times in the stomach.
Yeah.
I think it was.
She was
stabbed as a pregnant woman.
She was 8 months pregnant.
So they were probably some of the most brutal murders we had seen. But at the same time, we were getting through a war where people were getting tortured and raped and murdered on a regular basis.
I think it was nice for people to see a clear enemy that wasn't ourselves.
Yeah.
And I am not obviously any advocate for Charles Manson. He's 1,000% a sociopath. He 1,000% deserved to die in jail like he just recently did.
How recently?
Last year.
He was alive until last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them actually are still alive. You have...
So I knew the girls were alive. I didn't know Charles Manson was
Susan
still alive.
Atkins has passed. I think Tex is passed too, Tex Watson. I'm not sure. But anyhow, yeah, so some of the story is that, America we want a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so even with the girls, how long they were in jail. So some of them didn't even actually stab anybody in the house, and it was proven that they didn't stab anyone. They were just there. But because America wanted
to blame someone,
to make sure we had control over situations like this, they stayed in jail longer than some people who had committed full murders,
right?
Or first-degree murder, right?
I don't know what degree.
So basically, it just was blown so out of proportion because it's Sharon Tate, and I want to say that probably Quentin Tarantino had that in mind when he was making this, that it was just so like blown out of proportion because it was Sharon Tate in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas other people had been murdered just the same. Black people were being murdered, abused, beaten just the same, but nowhere near were the aggressors treated the same as Charles Manson and all these kids.
It's just when anything happens to a public figure, it just gets blown so much further out of proportion.
Yeah.
Like when sex scandals happen with politicians, or like when a celebrity's nudes are leaked. It's like, if my nudes were leaked tomorrow, nobody would give a fuck. So almost it makes it more personal because it's like it happened to someone you know. Like it's like it happened to your friend.
And it is Sharon Tate, and she was a beaming light at the time in Hollywood. She was up and coming star, not quite at her peak yet, but was about to be one of the most famous stars on the planet.
Even though she didn't get to say anything until halfway through the movie.
Which I read on that, too.
Yeah, so the movie, the themes, upon reflecting, initially when we left the theater, I was like, I don't know what the film was about. I feel like once I figure it out, I'll have enjoyed it more. And upon reflection, I was like, oh, it was clearly about like the old ways of Hollywood feeling threatened by the new like Hollywood that was coming in. And even at the very beginning, Al Pacino's character is like saying, you're playing second fiddle as a stepping stone for these new stars. You don't stop doing that because you're making yourself look bad. And for all intents and purposes, these characters are like, they're seeing their world just slowly fade away. And even Sharon Tate represents that. She represents the new. Bruce Lee kind of represents the new. It's all versions of how Hollywood's changing. And this film basically ended on a note where it was like, and what if it hadn't? What if the good guys, at least to Tarantino, won?
Yeah.
Which I think was kind of like, without getting into the ending just yet, was one of my issues with it. It was like to repurpose somebody's life to kind of tell your own fantasy story about like the old way of Hollywood. It's like, okay, cool. And the family has really enjoyed her portrayal. So
that's good.
That's a plus. It's just, it was one of those things where it's like, all right, like, but Hollywood did change. So
yeah. I'm actually interested because of the way you just described it now, where he's making a commentary on a time when Hollywood changed and kind of pushed out the old and started embracing something new. Is that kind of his way to like mirror what's going on in Hollywood now?
Absolutely. I can't remember what you were saying earlier, Grace, but there was something where it was just like, yeah, it clearly parallels.
Right.
Because you mentioned how Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, by no means are they, past their prime.
Yeah.
But they live in a landscape that's not made for people like them anymore. It's made for people like, the Chris Evans, the Chris Hemsworths. The people who can basically just play a character and then get replaced and then get replaced and get replaced, even though I love Chris Evans as Captain America.
Fantastic.
But you know what I mean, right? It's like, it's less about him because like the next Chris Evans movies that comes out, it's not going to be sold on his name as much as it might be sold on the image of him playing Captain America or the idea that he was at one point Captain America. Whereas like at a certain point, you could just sell a film on a person's name alone.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
So I was interested, though, in how you guys felt. What did you think of it in terms of the way it treated women? Because, like...
I read that article you sent.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't sent an article.
Well,
it is
not even
so
just...
hard with Tarantino because I see Tarantino who doesn't see anything how it should be seen.
Correct.
And that's what makes him great. He doesn't see men how they should be seen, even though, obviously,
he leans
towards men. But I think his view of everything is massively skewed, including Black people, including women, including children.
Is that a skewed that you would say is definable as bad, or is that skewed as definable as like unknown?
Definable as he doesn't have a full. He's not here. Like, he's Quentin Tarantino. He's kind of. I don't want to say that like idolizing him in any way. I just think he does remind me of a little kid that's just like, this is how I see things, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And with women, I think with the violence towards them, I haven't taken it personally, which that's just me. That doesn't mean the vast majority of women. Now, I have heard of where he's made women actually unsafe or feel unsafe on sets based on having them do things that they're not prepared to do, trick-wise or stunt-wise, Uma Thurman. So I'm not exactly sure how deep that goes, but I know that how I see it is it's kind of like he sees women as we can take the same amount that men can take. Almost in that manner. Okay. And how he's dealt with Lucy Liu and Uma Thurman in Kill Bill, where it was pretty violent, you know?
Yeah, I think the only problem, though, is that you still have a culture that, like, if a man gets punched, you go, and if a woman gets punched, you go, haha, that's funny. Yeah. She's a woman.
Yeah, no, it is. I do find that disturbing, and I often, you know, I do question Tarantino, but what can you do about that? That's my thing, is like, it is a...
Yeah. Who's laughing at a woman getting punched? What are we referencing?
I mean, there was a lot of people even in the theater, like
that would laugh. Atkins got beat.
And you didn't see the Hateful Eight because have you, Grace? Did you see the Hateful Eight?
No.
So that was
the only Quentin Tarantino film I think I've seen.
That was the first time I was like, oh man, that was a 3-hour film as well. More happened in it, but it still was kind of like, ugh, all right. I'm starting to see like the older directors get, the more they're like allowed to do what they want. Yeah. And the more you start to reevaluate, like, what's our relationship? Because the more you do what you want, the less I'm sure I want that.
After a while, you have to DTR with your director because you're like,
I think he lives in a fetish world. If
yeah,
that makes
clearly.
Sense. I mean, I'm not even talking about the amount of feet, which that was great to me.
That was disturbing.
Of course, you're gonna put. He said it's my second to last film. I'm gonna put as many fucking feet in here as I possibly can.
All the feet.
All the feet.
Dirty feet. Like they were all dirty.
Oh, he loves them.
Anyways,
step in food.
You're
dirt,
about
schmuck.
to say.
Yeah, you were saying fantasy fetish world.
Yeah, I just think potentially his whole that. It's so hard for me to hone in on a director when it's like, okay, we don't know the psychological disorders. Obviously, if he's not actually at home beating women, you know, it's not that I don't have a problem with it. It's that, okay, I don't have time to sit down and dive into a psyche of a man who has been made into a god because he creates these wonderful films, but at the core might have a mental disorder, might have a personality disorder, might have his own set of issues in his head. Like most directors out there, it's kind of like, we don't know what he is really like or what he's gone through or anything like that. I know some of his story, but it's hard to say, you know, oftentimes directors are, I don't want to say nerds, but definitely kids that were either outcast or just different, and they decided to create their own world. And that's what he does on a regular basis. Based on what are you looking at?
He's looking at me.
Had to flip right on over to my director here.
It's just so hard for me because it's like, he creates a world based on his brain. Maybe what's going on there isn't good, but that is how he lets it out.
Right.
So maybe maybe there is a violence towards women. Perhaps that he has an issue with women. You know, he grew up with his mom, and his mom had many different boyfriends, correct? Yeah. It is very hard to see women in a great light. I know in situations like that, oftentimes, even though she was probably a superhero and probably did the very, very best she could raising him. Wow. For men, when they don't have a full family, they can either be, you know, obsessed with their mom, or they can develop unhealthy animosity or disrespect towards women because they don't see how hard it really is, because they don't have somebody else saying there, get your shit together. That woman's taking care of you.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So if he's not actually enacting those towards women, for me, it's just a glimpse inside his brain. He has violent thoughts towards women. Yeah. Perhaps for what he's been through, not saying it's right or wrong, but he is not doing it, and he's not telling people to actually do it. He's just creating a film. And he chooses women who, in hindsight, had done horrible things, you know, who were controlled by a man. But Susan Atkins very willingly went. You know, she tried to backtalk and say, oh no, I didn't stab anybody in the house. Tex Watson killed all of them. But she very openly went in court and said, I killed everyone. I stabbed everyone in the house. Very like, righteously. So it's kind of like he takes out his aggression that potentially is going on in his mind on these characters.
Yeah, where it's like, it's not the most positive message all the way, but it's also a more constructive way to deal with aggression towards women. If you have the urge to punch women, maybe make a movie about it and don't have anyone get hurt.
I think that was, you nailed it on the head though. Like, this film more than any of them felt like a glimpse into Tarantino's mind.
Yes.
And there was stuff I was like, I'm not sure I want a glimpse anymore.
Right.
For me, and this is interesting because there's a lot of people who have very, very strong feelings about how to tackle the changing landscape of making films. I am fully behind the fact, even though I'm very big on inclusion, I'm very big on expanding what you talk about. I love that we're now we're colorblind casting, or being very specific with
colorful casting.
We're changing it up in terms of like sex and sexual preferences. So I'm very adamant on inclusion. However, I still feel that filmmakers have the right to make the films that they want to make it about. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I get very frustrated when I read comments where it's like, this movie was about a cis white male. I'm like, well, yeah, you can't force
Quentin
every
Tarantino's
director.
a cis white male.
Right.
Yeah.
So my thought is that it's less about the filmmakers that always, like, the filmmakers do need to make some changes, but I think the responsibility falls more on like the studios. They need to just expand who they
pick up.
Who they pick.
What stories they're picking.
But the filmmakers themselves should be allowed to essentially make their movies. Because it's like, what are we going to do? Police every single director and be like, hey, is that character a male?
Cis white male. That's 3 out of 3. You have to change one of those.
So, and it's like, so what we keep doing is like, we've got the same directors, but we're like pointing fingers at them going like, hey, you make our movies now. You make the movies that the audiences demand. And it's like, okay, or you could take a risk and hire directors who will do that. Yeah. And you're like, no, we still like it the way it is.
And they don't want to take that risk oftentimes. And here's the deal. This is with any form of like new venue. They're like worried. And it's even with TV shows. So with like Latin TV shows, Black TV shows, Asian TV shows, which are doing great now. They were so nervous because they didn't bring in as much money yet.
Right.
Because they didn't have a foundation yet. Because they weren't allowed to yet. And now it's getting to the point where it's like, okay, that's great. Inclusion, branch out, go get the directors, the ones that aren't known yet, and give them a space to grow.
Right.
They haven't had a space or budget to grow. A lot of these minorities haven't. A lot of us haven't had that space to grow, especially not the Latin minority. Like we have, but not in American culture. So it's just that time. But like I'm saying for you, same thing with Tarantino. Yes, make the films you want to make. Of course, it's going to be about a cis white man because that's who he is.
What he knows.
You know?
So my review of this is not me sitting here in the chair going like, well, he should have told this story. Well, he should have done that. However, there were multiple times where I was sitting in the theater, I was like, bro, like, I'm very uncomfortable. Like, case in point, I was very uncomfortable with the younger actress.
Yeah.
Who I've met before. I like her.
Yeah.
She's really good.
She was amazing.
What is her name?
She's so great. That scene was really
Shoot,
funny.
what is her name? I'm blanking on her name. I met her, and I can't.
She looks like a Rosie. Is that her name?
No, her name's not Rosie.
Rosie McClellan.
Oh, hold on. Where is...
I just feel like we could have cut an hour out of that movie.
But I also think
that
he did that on purpose because he's tired of these vines. Like, I can see Quentin Tarantino.
He's like, I'm going to make you idiot millennials sit
watch
down.
This shit because you like me that much. And you all think I'm so cool. And you all have my poster in your house.
Right.
You have my Pulp Fiction
I'm going to force you to watch this.
I'm going to force you to sit and watch cinema.
Right. But, okay, so her name was Julia Butters. She's on that show, American... What are you about to say?
Is that really her name?
Really quick.
What?
Julia Butters? No, I just have to say really quickly that just because you said that, I actually like the movie now. Like, I literally, if he were to be all like, no, I literally just wanted millennials to watch something and be focused on something for more than 7 seconds. Yeah.
I can respect that. No, she was great. I loved it. There were just certain things where it's like, you don't want to police him. Because like I said, I'm not going to go there on set and be like, do it this way, do it that way. It just was telling for instance, just like even the shot where it's like she comes up to comfort him, and how does she comfort him? She gets down on her knees, puts her hand on his leg, and the camera is like overlooking him, looking down at her.
Yeah.
And it was just like clearly a power play.
Low key creepy.
It was like it's little stuff that you can't necessarily go, that's wrong, but you're just like, I see how you see women. That even a young girl is essentially just, even though like
Who is smarter and more talented. And,
way more.
Yeah.
You know,
Very
And
much
like,
so.
but she could have, like Benji, what were you saying? She could have easily just walked up and.
Touched him on the shoulder, but I'm like, hey, bud, you okay?
But instead, they had to do kind of like a low key kind of.
Or like pulled up her chair and sat next to him and like grabbed his hand and been like, hey.
What was the word we used? It was submissive.
Yeah.
There was just a submissiveness to it, and there was just little things like that peppered throughout the film where I was like, I like it, but I see it's more apparent kind of the way you view the world. And for me personally, I was like, I don't know. It's just like, even he was like all up in the little girl, like just grabbing her, like.
Yeah, whenever he was like holding her hostage, she was like sitting in his lap and he's like holding her across the chest.
Yeah.
Which, like, this is getting really like nitpicky.
Yeah, and that made me very uncomfortable.
But it's uncomfortable. Like, a grown man shouldn't have a little girl in his lap unless it's his daughter. And then
And even then, like.
But
and
like,
they try to make it okay by making her extremely mature, and it's the same thing at how I think they deal with Millie Bobby Brown, which really bothers me. Is because she's so intelligent, because they're so hyper intelligent, they feel like they can treat them like adults, but they're not. Even still, it's funny because she is more prepared. She is on set.
She was great.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
I
Is
know.
that she said that's the best acting I've ever seen to the guy who's not prepared, who doesn't care, who's acting like a child. You know. And
Also,
it's just
that
like,
shot, the way it was framed, when I first saw the first trailer, she comes in and it was like so uncomfortably close, like almost like her lips were framed around his lips, that I remember thinking, that was weird.
I remember actually you saying that when you saw that.
Yeah, and it just in the trailer, and then the entire film I was like, okay. So it's like, I'm not going to sit there and talk with Tarantino and be like, hey man, why are you being creepy with girls? Because it's like, I know.
he's probably.
But also, he very clearly in the movie put the scene where Brad Pitt doesn't let the girl give him a blowjob in the car because
Shouldn't
she's
have picked her
clearly
up in the
not-
first place.
Clearly not 18. So, I mean, it's the case of he has this fantasy, but he's like, I'm not doing it.
But she offered. So there is even more of an issue there. I'm sorry. If you really want to dive into like
Oh, yeah.
that kind of stuff, it's like guys will be like that. If you offer it, they're going to say no. And it's a power play of saying, I have power over you. I want you to not want this and me to be able to tell you.
That's true. I
what
see
we're
that.
doing.
I see
Yeah,
that.
I saw it maybe less like that and more like, oh, see, I'm okay, guys. I'm okay. See, I wrote him fine. And it's just like, yeah, but you've still wrote. It's like the guy who's like, man, that girl acts like a whore all the time. And, you know, that girl's like, kind of like, why is she acting like a whore all the time? And like, if you kept saying, like, bro, do you have an obsession with that girl? Like, no, bro, no, I'm just saying, like, bro, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how about the character choices? Or are we done?
I thought you were
No,
supposed
no,
to say,
we're-
how about them Cowboys?
How about them Cowboys?
Character choices as in.
For casting for, well, you don't really know the Manson, like the actual.
Nah.
How did you
fam.
feel about the casting?
Of course, I didn't like it
Okay.
for the Manson family members, but it's not a film about the Manson family.
No.
Yeah.
So I have to keep that in mind.
I liked Austin Butler.
Everybody does.
He was creepy.
He was great.
I didn't even recognize him, dude.
I think they were great. I think that they just were nothing, absolutely nothing like any of them in real life. Susan Atkins is very quiet and very much talks very like this. Now, she was crazy, but it came from this false innocence, and it was very bizarre. And the girl they had in the film was just annoying. Sounded like you're like...
Was it the one who was like, man, like all
Yeah.
that, like, yeah.
That it was very
interesting.
phony. It was very weird, but I think he did that on purpose, so I can't argue it either. But I just thought it was like, damn, if you're gonna bring such an iconic story to cinema and to use it for just a little part of it, I wish the casting would have been like spot on
point. Yeah.
you know, where it would have been. I wouldn't have felt so like ugh, when that story got brought up, because obviously he changed everything in it. So you already have that.
Spoiler.
That's kind of.
I was just kidding.
Yeah, that's kind of...
You have that's kind of a disappointment, but not really, because you understand how he used it. But it was a disappointment that the girl, and I heard that something about he chose all celebrities' children to play the Manson family
Oh, really?
for specific reasons. Yeah, and I understand that. I think it's cool. I'm just like, I feel like there would have been better choices.
Yeah.
I don't think Squeaky Fromm was anything like Squeaky Fromm.
Which one was that?
That was Elle Fanning.
Oh, right.
But I love.
No,
Elle
I think that was
Fanning.
Dakota Fanning.
Oh, that was Dakota. That's
Yeah.
right. That was Dakota.
Thought so.
Which I love her.
Yeah.
So she was great as whoever she played, but who she played was not Squeaky. Unless she wasn't playing Squeaky Fromm. No, I think she was. But it just wasn't. And then Tex is a big dude. Tex Watson is a big dude. Big Texas dude.
Oh my God. That line at the very end when he's like, what was your name? And he says something like, I am the devil. And then
I'm
it
here to do
paused.
the devil's business.
No, it was something dumber than that.
That was
Brad
great.
Pitt's delivery in that final scene was phenomenal.
I would love to watch the final scene again because I have this thing where, like, in suspenseful type movies or situations, I can't enjoy it the first time because I'm concerned about how the characters are going to come out. So when I watch it the second time, I can be like, oh, because I didn't laugh at any of the funny parts because I was like, you're going to die. Like, you can't make jokes because he's got a gun in your face. So I was like, this isn't funny. But if I watch it again, I'd be like, ha ha ha. That's
Yeah,
funny
I
that
feel
he's
it.
laughing with a gun.
You don't even like
definitely-
nervously laugh?
No.
That's like
It's
usually
not
what you're trying to go
playtime.
for.
No, is not that. This is Endgame at this point.
Okay, this is Endgame. Well, I guess, I mean, yeah, we are starting to like run out of time here. Might as well just fast forward that ending.
I love it.
Let's talk about it.
I love it. I thought it was a great ending. I thought the violence towards women thing though, when he killed the one girl and like slammed her head into 27 different things, I was like, hey, that's aggressive.
And he was already a woman killer, right?
Yeah.
'Cause he already killed
Well,
his wife.
they never confirmed it,
He did.
but for some reason that was brought up.
With a
So it's
whale
just like,
spear.
Yeah, I was like, I don't, I understand obviously she was like trying to kill you, but like she's clearly down, like leave it.
right.
You know?
And it's different than like Inglourious Bastards for a few reasons. A, Adolf Hitler really did die, and the war really did end. So with like the Nazis, you had this kind of like very specific, like, this is what we subscribe to. And it was like, it was almost a mantra. Like, not every Nazi, well, not every German soldier was horrendous. Most Nazis were, most SS were.
Right.
It made for a little bit more easy watch where you're just like, yeah, do whatever you want. Like, the older I get, the less I'm big into that revenge fantasy. I'm just like, I mean, I'm older. We're past that. In
Yeah.
Django, it was different. It still was like they're taking on racism, but it was still like Tarantino's version of racism, where it's just like you only have one version of racist, not like the more complex Get Out version of it, where it's less about like, because a lot of the people, like even Abraham Lincoln, he didn't hate black people. He just was like, oh, we can save them, but they might not be as smart as us. Yeah. So it's like there's that subtlety that's kind of lost in a Tarantino film. This one, it just kind of was like, once again, the nth degree. I'm like, all right, they were murderers. I get what you're doing.
But not really, because in real life, Susan Atkins didn't kill anybody.
And it was like, it was a home invasion with seemingly the intent to kill, but they hadn't necessarily done anything.
Because it was our foreknowledge that was like, yeah,
Exactly,
kill him.
yeah,
but not the
because-
character's foreknowledge.
No,
Yeah.
they definitely, Brad Cooper was just,
Brad Cooper?
Yeah.
why do I keep doing that? Brad Pitt was definitely way too excited to beat the F out of
Right.
those
Yeah,
chicks.
exactly.
And it wasn't like in Inglourious Bastards where it's like, we killed Nazis, but then again, we're in a war where Nazis have been pretty shitty.
Yeah.
Or Django where it's like, we killed slave owners, but then again, they were slave owners.
Or was it to make us question the machismo in Hollywood and what they can get away with because they always look like heroes in the end?
That's a subtlety I'm not sure Tarantino was really
With
going
the
for.
being okay with the girl sitting on his lap because he's a phenomenal actor. With torching a woman, being okay because now he's the hero and gets Sharon Tate, the woman, saved her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What if?
That's actually,
You know what? Let's choose to believe that. Choose to believe that there was a higher calling for this movie.
Tarantino said, nah, I wanted to see hot white dudes beat the out of these.
Bitches.
well, I honestly don't think it was as deep as even that. Like for him, it was just like you said, love letter. This is my story I want to tell. This is how it's going to be. That's it.
Yeah.
It's just for people. There's certain people that you watch and you go, okay. I don't know. And for me, that was like, I already kind of like squirm at violence, but it was good. But after a while, I was like, okay, bro, like,
Dude, that was
But
I
he's
was
done
cringing.
that for a minute because even remember in Pulp Fiction, he has that whole rape scene.
yeah,
Really?
which
So he doesn't. I don't think anybody's spared when it comes to Tarantino.
no, they're not. It just definitely like the older I get, the more I'm like he stays the same, and I'm changing, and I'm just like. It's like that cool uncle or that cool like youth leader or something. You're like, yeah, you're really awesome. But then you get older and you're like, oh, you're kind of the same. And
You got issues.
I'm moving on with my life. And it's like, that's how Tarantino feels. Like, he's still cool. He's still Tarantino. We're just different, you know?
Yeah, definitely evolving now.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the point, man.
I mean, that is basically the entire theme of the film. He's just like, what if we didn't have to? And what if people like me and the Rick
And
Daltons.
had our good white leading men.
Just everything.
I mean, if you're going to do a movie about two top leading white men,
They picked the
The
top.
they picked the best
they
one.
picked the
So,
top.
Heartthrobs.
Benji, do you have any thoughts? I know that Grace and I can be pretty talky.
That was a great episode, you guys.
I have to use the restroom.
Do you?
Looks
You can
like
take a
we're
break.
gonna. Oh, are we taking a restroom break? Or
She
are
can
we
take a
just-
restroom break. Yeah, we still have to finish it up. Like, we're done talking about it, but
My ass is sweaty.
That's hot.
all right. Well, we're back from a pee break. How was that pee, Grace?
Excellent.
Heavenly.
Well, any final thoughts before we end the episode? Anything you have to say to Mr. Tarantino?
I appreciate when you don't like how history played out and you say, no, I'm going to say that it went this way. Because I do that all the time. So, respect.
I wanted to see Margot Robbie kick some ass.
I wanted to see her do
I wanted
more.
her pregnant body to pummel a bitch.
I'm surprised you didn't have like weird lingering shots of her and her pregnant feet.
Ugh.
I know.
Blech.
Yeah, the connection to Margot Robbie in the film is very odd to me, but a lot of people said that, and I don't really know what to say about it. She didn't talk a lot.
Yeah.
He made her character kind of whatever. But thanks, Tarantino. Another good film to talk about.
Like I said, even if we're disappointed by it, it's still going to be better than most.
Yep, still better than other films.
Yeah.
Way to go. Good old Quentin.
I mean,
Quentin.
the only thing I can say is, hey, Quentin, I don't know how old you are now, but you're pretty much set in your ways, so okay. But you're kind of creepy sometimes. So where can we find ourselves?
You can find me at Benj Watch, BENJ Watch, on Instagram.
Okay.
And anywhere else that matters. Just follow my Instagram. I really don't do anything else. Right
Why is that? Just do it, guys.
Just follow
I
the
need it.
Instagram. And then this guy's at Josiah J. Rizzo on all platforms. This girl is on...
You can find me at thugmuffin_top on Instagram, thugmuffin_top on Twitter, thugmuffin_top on SoundCloud, and thugmuffin_top on Grindr.
And
So that would be Thug Muffin Top on all platforms.
and do you have anything coming out soon that we can look out for?
We have the single Puff out on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, iTunes,
Yes.
Tidal. We have Ugly, the single on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, all of them,
Yas, Queen.
all platforms.
And you can, of course, follow us at Pink Popcast. Are you not going to say your normal thing? Is your goal to just poke me with a stick this episode?
That's Pop, P-O-P, cast.
And be sure to, rate and review us on Apple iTunes.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Like, comment, and subscribe. You can also watch us on YouTube.
And leave us a comment. We're going to read our best and our worst ones.
Yes, we are. That's pretty much it.
All
Anything
right.
else before we sign off?
Bye,
Do you guys want to do anything more? Do you want to rip the background off the wall? Don't do it. Oh God, don't do it. No. I'm Josiah J. Rizzo.
Pink Podcast.
I'm Benji Jones.
I'm Thug Muffin, Grace Rizzo Top.
And on Wednesdays, we wear pink.
Da-da-da-da.
to be talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Nice.
Yes. So
I'm gonna do that again. Today we have my sister Grace Rizzo, and we're gonna be talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So the movie we're talking about is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I just saw a tear fall from her eye, trying not to say Mexico. Okay, so we got that. Who's it by?
Quentin Tarantino.
Yes.